The Duval Rundown is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines. Now here's your host, Gus Logue.
Good morning, good afternoon, rather, and welcome to episode 13 of Duval Rundown. Today we're going to be joined by Frank Frangie to provide some reasons for optimism surrounding the Jacksonville Jaguars, because there's a lot of sadness in Northeast Florida right now, especially considering the way that the Florida Gators and Florida State Seminoles are playing in their respective football seasons. But we wanted to kind of turn things around and just get a new view of just things to be happy about through 1 month of football for the Jaguars. But before we get to that, we are going to get to trivia first, as we always do. This information I learned from Josh Duval of the Associated Press. Trevor Lawrence has lost 9 straight starts. The only one quarterback who was picked first overall has lost more in a row since the 1970 merger. Who is it? A. Troy Aikman, B. Jim Plunkett, C. Carson Palmer, or D. Jared Goff? Give a couple seconds to think about what they want to answer. Man, I gotta improve my freestyling. The correct answer is A. Troy Aikman. I believe he had 11 straight losses in a row as a starter with the Cowboys, and of course, he also won 3 Super Bowls with the '90s, with the Cowboys in the '90s. I mean, so we'll see what happens with the rest of Trevor Lawrence's career, but in the last 9 starts, it has not been very pretty. So Frank Frangie is a very busy man, and so we had to pre-record today's little segment, guest interview segment with him. And so I'm going to turn it over to past version of Gus for our sit down with Frank Frangie. Made 2.5 along with Hayes Carline and JJ La Silva. Frank, how you doing a month into this season? Are you holding up pretty well, or are you falling into the doom and gloom around Jacksonville?
No, I'm not holding up all right. I'm doing terrible, Gus. Hey, look, it's early in the year. We're all kind of fighting this together, and hopefully get through it. Surprised that it started this way. I really am.
Yeah, well, I do want to give you credit because I read the Jaguars.com post where you guys do a roundtable predicting each game, and you said that you expected a fourth quarter down to the wire game, and that's exactly what happened in Week 4 against the Houston Texans. Of course, the Jaguars did lose that game 20-24, and they are now the only winless team in the NFL. But we wanted to change things up a little bit for this show since there is so much doom and gloom around town. We wanted to see if there was any positive takeaways we could take away from just the first month of Jaguars football. And so on an individual level to start, Frank, just who are some players that have stood out to you in a positive way?
You know, I think the positive overall, Gus, is that they're close. Nobody wants to hear that. But other than the Bills game, they're not getting rolled left and right here. They're hanging around. They're 3 plays from winning those games. They're a play from all those games. So I think that's the positive. Look, as far as guys individually, nobody's jumped off the page more than Brian Thomas Jr. He's special, dude. He's got a burst. They haven't had an explosive guy like that since Jimmy Smith. They've had good receivers, but as far as an explosive guy, a double move guy, a guy that can take the top off the defense and do the other things, yards after the catch, he's really good. So they got that one right. I think from an individual standpoint, some players are playing well. Tank Bigsby's running well. ETN's running well. I think Christian Kirk had a big game. We needed him to have a big game, and he finally did. I think the back end of the defense, the secondary, Mike Herrick Brown's been fantastic. Ventrell Miller, how do you take him off the field after the way he played the other day? He's their fastest linebacker. He's got the most burst. So, yeah, I think there's been some good signs. The best overall sign for me, Gus, is they're right there. They should have beaten Miami and they should have beaten Houston. They led both those games in the fourth quarter. Now, again, you are what your record says you are, and they're the only winless team in the league, but I think they're close. I really do.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot of standout performances from individual players. I thought Ronald Darby was the best cornerback for the Jaguars through 3 weeks, but then he had a little bit of a down game against Nico Collins. But as you said, Monteric Brown really stepped up, and he's been doing that even since last year when Tyson Campbell was dealing with a hamstring injury then. And then Tank Bigsby actually just looked this up this morning. He leads all players in the NFL right now with yards per carry at 8.2, even more than Lamar Jackson and Anthony Richardson and any quarterback or player that's ran at least 20 times this season. And so obviously that's skewed a little bit by like the 58-yarder that he had against the Texans this week and some other big plays, but encouraging to see Tank Bigsby performing that he is in his second year. Same with Ventrell Miller, who's another guy that you said, and Brian Thomas. I've got a stat for him. Right now, the only players with more first downs per route run as a first-round rookie receiver are Malik Neighbors, Odell Beckham, Puka Nacua, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and Justin Jefferson since 2010. Those are the only first-round, or not even first-round, just rookie wide receivers with more first downs per route run. And so I agree with you where Brian Thomas has to be the brightest spot on the team so far.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, he's going to be fantastic. And go back to your stat on Bigsby for a second. The biggest, in my mind, Gus, the biggest concern this team has, the thing they haven't been able to fix since last year and this year, is third and short and fourth and short. Look, if they can convert fourth and short, last year they beat the Titans, they win the division, they're back-to-back division champions, which doesn't happen around here very often, and they couldn't do it. This year they ran a sweep with ETN in the Miami game, and Cam Robinson whiffed his guy. Against the Houston Texans, they had some, they had plays inside the 2-yard line, and Brandon Sheriff got blown up. They have got to figure out third and short and fourth and short. So back to Bigsby, he's their downhill runner. I think ETN can run between the tackles. He probably doesn't get enough credit for that. But Tank is their downhill guy, man. He's the guy that runs downhill. And I think if they're going to fix third and one and fourth and one, and they've got to, whether it's with quarterback sneaks, whether it's with putting one of those big 300-pound defensive linemen in at fullback like teams do these days, whether it's adding an offensive lineman, whatever they've got to do, they've got to fix third and one and fourth and one. I got a hunch Tank Bigsby is going to be a big part of that. I really do.
I think that's right, because as you just broke down kind of all the failed third and fourth down opportunities that the Jags have had this season, feels like the trend there is that the offensive coaches have gotten a little bit too cute, whether it's a quarterback draw and fourth and the goal line or just sweeps to the outside. It would be nice to see them just play a little bit more straight up and just go get the yard and tough it out when they need to. And so I think Bigsby could certainly be a big part of that. I want to go back to what you started out the conversation with, which is that they're close and only the Bills game has been a blowout. And other than that, it's just been kind of a few games of inches. And so we've seen that in the first two Doug Peterson seasons, where in 2021 they started out pretty slow and then ended up coming back and making the playoffs and having that huge comeback against the Chargers. And then last year they started off really hot and kind of fell back down to earth. And so just looking to the future, Frank, for this season, do you think that they're going to be able to turn it around the way that they have in the past because these are such close games?
I think they'll play better and start winning some games, Gus. Will they win enough to get the playoffs? You know the number. It's happened one time in history. A team started 0-4 and made the playoffs. It was the '92 Chargers. That was a long time ago. So it was 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the analytics and the odds say it's going to be hard to be in the postseason. But hey, you got to keep playing. You have 13 games. They're not canceling them. You got to play them. I think they're going to start winning some of those games. I think they're close enough to win some. The concern is, man, you lose confidence. There's still human beings out there. And the more times you don't win, the harder it is to win the next time. You know what they say about a basketball shooter, a three-point shooter? If he keeps missing and he gets in a slump and can't make one, they say go shoot some layups, because he has to just sort of see it go through the hoop, right? You got to see it go through the hoop. Sure. I think this team needs to win, man. If they can find a way to win, somehow find a way to win a game. That's why that game Sunday was so devastating, because if they get it in from the 2, they win the game. And then all of a sudden you're 1-3. You're undefeated in the division. Here come the Colts. You're going to be favored in that game if you'd have won that game. So now the Colts come in. I think you may be favored anyway. You're favored in the game. Now you're 2-3 and you're undefeated in the division, and you're going to London where you play well. All of that would have been in play. Forget the first 3 games. If they'd have found a way to finish in Houston, then all of that's in play. You come back from London 4-3. You're in first place in the division, and everybody's happy. So that's why that one hurt so much. They're going to start winning games. Are they going to win enough games to get to the postseason? We'll see. But they've got to get that first win. I said this on the air yesterday, Gus. There's one goal, man. That's win a game. Forget about the division. Forget about overall record. Forget about down the road. Forget about what the schedule looks like. Win a freaking game. Find a way to win a game. That's the only goal, is to score more points than the Indianapolis Colts. That's the season goal right now, is to find a way to win a game. They need to win a game.
Yeah, I know that their kind of mantra inside the building coming from Doug Peterson is let's just go 0-1 this week. And you hear a lot of players say that during like locker room availability is let's just go 0-1 this week. And so that's been the message the whole season and going back to previous seasons as well. But it really stands out for this week for sure. And it'll be interesting to monitor throughout the week the injuries that the Colts have coming to Jacksonville, as Jonathan Taylor sprained his ankle and Anthony Richardson hurt his hip in week 4 against the Steelers. But speaking of injuries, like we already talked about a little bit, how individual players on defense like Monteric Brown and Ventrell Miller have stepped up in the case of Jaguars injuries, which is mostly notable for Tyson Campbell, who's out with a hamstring, and Foye Oluokun, who's joins Campbell on short-term injured reserve with a foot injury. And so I wanted to ask you just what you've seen from Ryan Nielsen so far, because I was really encouraged by what he did to CJ Stroud and the Texans to only allow 24 points, especially coming off of the Monday Night Football debacle where it seemed like they were completely lost as a defense.
Yeah, other than the Buffalo game, they've been really good. I think they have been. Now, they haven't been perfect. The 2 big plays hurt them against Miami. A long drive or 2 against Cleveland. That's probably what surprised me the most. Is Cleveland held the ball on them in that first half for as long as they did. But no, I think the defense has been pretty good. He's finding his way with the Jaguar personnel. Anytime you're a brand new coordinator, Gus, you got to find your way. You think you know what you have through OTAs. You think you know what you have through camp. You have a preseason where the starters play a little bit, but you really don't know what you have with your team until you've coached them in real games. And I think Ryan's feeling his way. I think the book on him, as we all know, is he'd like to play man defense, crowd the line and play man. I think you've seen more zone of late, and it's worked. He's had changing personnel as he tries to feel his way. So to your question, I think Ryan's done a good job. I think the tackles have to play better. I think if there's a concern, the tackles have to play better. If the tackles play better and attract more attention, then the edge guys can do more. So you need more from that front. I would think Ventrell Miller, how do you take him off the field? I mean, I'm not saying all of a sudden you bench Lloyd or Oluokun, but you have to have 51 in your rotation. He's your fastest linebacker. He's got the best burst. He doesn't have the experience the other guys have, and that's all of a sudden pretty good. Those 2 really, even though you're a 4-3, they're 2 inside linebackers. The Sam guy plays up on the line of scrimmage. So those 2 guys that are inside, he's got to be in your rotation now. Same with Monteric Brown. When Tyson Campbell does come back, I've got to believe Monteric Brown competes with Ronald Darby for that spot. And if not, maybe plays the nickel. He's been really good. So, yeah, I think Ryan's done a nice job with the defense. I think he's still feeling his way. And I think the offense has to help him a little bit. I mean, the defense got off the field 5 straight times, 5 straight possessions in the second half. They forced the Texans punt. And if the offense just turns one of those into a touchdown, the game's over. So the offense has to help that defense more than it has.
Yeah, and I'm honestly a little bit encouraged by what you're saying, that the biggest concern for the Jaguars defense is their defensive tackle play, just because Nielsen himself is such a renowned coach in terms of the fundamentals and the technique of the defensive line, and specifically defensive tackles, really. And so I think that's a group that we could see continue to improve over the course of the year. And then I'm with you where it's going to be hard to keep Ventrell off the field, but with the way that Nielsen rotates his front 7 so often, then even with when Devin Lloyd comes back from injury as soon as this week, I think we'll see a good mix of both of them. And so to move it forward again, I know that we're trying to take away positives from this season, but it does seem like there will be new coaches in Jacksonville starting next year. And so I wanted to get your opinion on who you like as a possible 2025 head coach candidate for the Jags.
Yeah, for me, that's a little ahead of the game, a little ahead of putting the cart in front of the horse now. Yeah, I'm not convinced that we're headed to that. I maybe it's because I don't want us to be. You know, we've had enough coaches. You know, we've had 5 coaches since 2012 or whatever it is. So I'm not convinced of that yet. I think if it gets to that, guys, it'll be all the familiar names. It'll be the Ben Johnson and Joe Brady and whoever the hot coordinator guys are. The names are easy. You know, every offseason, you know who's getting jobs. It's the hot coordinator here or the longtime coordinator there, and so I think do we really know a much difference between Ben Johnson and Joe Brady and this guy and that guy? At least for me, not yet. But I'm not there yet. I'm not convinced yet that it's all getting blown up. There's 13 games to play. I think they've got a good team. I think they've got a good roster. I hope they play good. I'm rooting for them. I'm rooting for Doug. I'm rooting for all of them. I'm rooting for Trevor. I'm rooting for these players. I think, despite what some people believe, there's a good relationship between Doug and these guys. I think Doug trusts these guys. I think they trust him. He made a comment in the press conference the other day that, look, it's a two-way street, and we have to call the right plays, and those guys have to go execute. And I think a lot of people view that as throwing his players under the bus, and I didn't do that way at all. Brian Callahan 2 weeks earlier called Will Levis dumb. He said, "Oh, the dumb plays. You have to quit making dumb plays." That's throwing your player under the bus. I think what Doug was saying is, listen, we're in this together, man. We're in that locker room together. We practice together. It's our job to call the plays, and it's their job to execute the plays, and both have to work. Maybe I read that wrong, Gus. I never heard that as coach playing throwing his players under the bus. I just think, again, that's not how I interpret it. This guy's done 40 post-game press conferences. He's done, 300 pressers since he's had the job, probably? It's pretty clear he respects his guys. I mean, it is pretty – there's a good relationship there. They just have to start making plays. I think so. So I'm not ready yet to say coach is out, who's the next guy. If they keep losing, then, yeah, that's a conversation. It's disingenuous to think that conversation is not coming into play. I'm probably not there yet.
All right. So my last question for you is about Trevor Lawrence and the relationship between him and Doug Peterson, because I agree with you. I don't think Doug was completely wrong in saying after last week's game that the players need to make plays. Like Trevor Lawrence objectively had 2 overthrows on could be touchdowns to Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk. But to me, like, those throws are throws that we've seen him make for close to a decade, going back to like high school. And so to me, it seems like he's just a little bit in that shooting slump that you're almost talking about earlier, and he just needs to get out of it and get a little bit more confident. So what do you think Doug Peterson needs to say to Trevor Lawrence to kind of back on track and back in the rhythm?
Yeah, I'm not worried about Trevor at all. I'm with you. He's made those throws. He's going to continue to make those throws. Everybody is pressing now. Everybody is tight. Doug had a great analogy in his press conference yesterday when he said it's the golf analogy. You get hyped up and the adrenaline gets flying, so maybe you use a little less club because you're going to swing harder. Well, I think the same thing with Trevor. He's not missing short, Gus. He's missing long. On all his throws, he's high, he's long, and that's a guy that's hyped up. It's pressing a little bit. They need to relax. They need to go have fun. Trevor needs to go play golf. He and Christian need to run out there and play golf. They need to relax a little bit. It's not the end of the world, man. It's a football game, and I think everybody's with. Trevor's a really good guy. He's a pleaser. He wants to make everybody happy. He wants to go around the locker room and have everybody be okay. He's a really. If you've been around Trevor, I'm guessing you have. We've all been around Trevor a lot. He's a really good dude, man. He is a good soul, good Christian person, man. This is a good dude. And he just wants everyone to be happy. And he's trying so hard, so freaking hard to get it right. I hope he relaxes. Does that make sense? I hope he just relax. Enjoy your job, man. Enjoy it, because he's going to be just fine. He's worth every penny they paid him. I'm not worried about that. If people don't agree with that, that's fine. He's going to get there. We've seen him make the plays. I think Trevor's going to be fine. And as for your question, I think Doug's frustrated for Trevor as much as he is with Trevor. And listen, my point isn't saying all the play calls have been perfect. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying. I think to Doug's point, they're all in this together. There have been some play calls that didn't make much sense. There have been some very good play calls that the team didn't execute. I think Trevor's going to be fine, guys. I think again, nobody expected that. I'm shocked they started 0-4. I knew the first part of the schedule would be tough. But again, you're not going to – I think they outplayed the Dolphins and the Texans and lost both games. So if they keep outplaying teams, they're going to win enough games, and I think Trevor's going to get going. I really do.
I'm right there with you. We'll see if that happens as soon as this week. But, Frank, I'll let you go. I know you're a very busy man, but thank you so much for joining, and hopefully we'll have you back at some point later in the season.
Happy to do it, Gus, anytime. Thanks, buddy.
All right. All right. That was Frank. Thanks again to him for joining for that little guest interview segment, talking about some reasons for optimism surrounding the Jaguars into the first month of the 2024 season. I'm really excited about the next segment that we have. I teased it a little bit last week, where we're changing it up. It's going to go from top quotes to show and tell. And so it's basically the same thing, where I'm just trying to keep everyone up to date, erase any FOMO that Jags fans might have, just provide all of the best quotes and content that I see in between shows. So yeah, but before we get to that, we're going to have a brief message from our sponsor. All right, thank you to Injury Care Centers. Let's start out with a clip from CBS Sports. Matt Ryan and a couple analysts were talking about Trevor Lawrence and the offense's woes before the Week 4 game against the Texans, but I still thought it was a conversation worth checking out. So here's Matt Ryan and the crew.
Outside of
Matt, what is going on?
Well, outside of all of the other things that he's dealing with, the arrows that you take during the week in the media, the football side of it, he has been inaccurate, right? He has been inaccurate between 5 and 20 yards down the field. That's really where your bread is buttered as a quarterback. You have to hit in the intermediate passing game. To me, it doesn't look mechanical. It looks like a confidence issue. He's clearly slumping, coach. If you're a head coach, how do you get a guy out of that space?
Well, number one, he's got to make easy throws. And I'd say go refer back to the running game. You're talking about a team right now. They're 30th on third down, which means what? You are not extending drives. It's hard to get into a rhythm if you don't continue to have at least a first down or two to develop a little bit of a pattern and get into a flow. So to me, I'd go back to running the football. And to me, that's, again, I go back, that's on the coach, Doug Peterson. If he has to take it away from the OC, take it away. Because you want your quarterback to feel comfortable. I need Trevor Lawrence in the fourth quarter. I don't need him to do too much in the first and second quarter, but when the ball's in his hands, I'm paying him right now, Coach, to be the guy that can close a game.
I feel what you're saying, and I like Trevor Lawrence as a man and as a player. But if I'm in that locker room and I'm listening to these whispers, and all of a sudden the coach walks into the offensive meeting room, he says, we're going to simplify the offense. I would think to myself, you're simplifying the offense for a guy who's making $40+ million? He's the face of the franchise, the highest paid player. He should be able to handle the weight of the world on his shoulders. And that's not me taking a direct shot at him.
No, it's not a shot. And I'm with Coach, too. You need to be at your best as a quarterback in the fourth quarter.
Right.
But when you have a guy that's slumping, he also needs some layups, right? In that first quarter, second quarter. You need to build some kind of continuity. And at the end of the day, it's on him. He's got to look in the mirror, and he's got to get it right.
When Jim Harbaugh went to the LA Chargers, you have Justin Herbert, and he's a great quarterback. But he gave him a running game.
Yes.
Because I want a running game, because I want to be able to develop a mentality of toughness, mentally and physically.
Regardless of how much he's getting paid, he needs help, too. I feel you on that. All right.
All right, and now let's fast forward to about 3 or 4 hours later. Trevor Lawrence addresses the media after the Texans loss. This video is via Jaguars YouTube.
Right now, and just small victories.
Just have to keep playing. We gotta stay together. Just gotta keep playing. And this is some adversity. It's been tough, obviously not having the success that we want. And there's a lot of guys in there that put a lot of time in, coaches and players and really everyone. I mean, everyone that works with the team. So it's frustrating. It's hard, but you have some adversity. You got to get through it, get to the other side of it, and it'll help you in the long run. And that's what we're preaching as a team is just it's frustrating. It's not going our way. And we weren't able to find a way to win this game. We had some mistakes out there, but we just have to stay together. It's going to teach us something. It's going to prepare us for the future and stay positive. I mean, there was things that we did well today, and we just have to do more of it, and I don't think we don't need to blow everything up and start over. Like we got good players. We have a good scheme offensively. We had great things today, and we just got to consistently make those plays. I thought we had a lot of opportunities. So just keep working. That's the message. Just keep working this week.
Keep making plays is what Trevor Lawrence said. Interesting in relation to what Doug Peterson said after the game. This video is also via Jaguars YouTube.
The headset over just to change this thing up.
For what? I thought he called a great game. We as coaches, we can't go out there and make the plays, right? It's a two-way street. So, you guys can sit here and point the finger all you want, and that's fine. Point it right at me. I can take it. Okay? I can take it. So, whatever you want to ask me, say, whatever, write, go ahead.
You did tell us at your introductory news conference a couple of years ago, if it's not working, if it's not in rhythm, whether it's your plays or not, that you hand off the play calling. Is it just one of those, maybe it's just a voice, a confidence? You guys were cooking when you were doing it, it looked like in 22.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll take it into consideration.
Okay, anybody else? Thanks, Coach. So pretty interesting 60-second clip there where Doug Peterson, first he publicly confirms for the first time this year that Press Taylor is calling plays. Then he says players need to execute before saying point the finger at me, the head coach. And then he just kind of walks off with some sass. So not really the best display that you'd like to see from your head coach, even if the team has started with disappointment 0-4 so far. But here was Adam Schefter on the Pat McAfee show on ESPN reacting to that press conference clip.
AFC South has been a problem for the Colts, so I got respect for the ability that they have. But that's getting ugly down there, Shefty, isn't it? It's kind of getting ugly down there right now.
0-4, right? They should have won the first game against Miami, and they don't, and that's where it seems to get sideways. And look, he's backing his guy, Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator there, when the reporters were asking questions about that. It's exactly what Doug did when he was in Philadelphia. He backed Press Taylor. And he stood behind it. Doug believes in supporting his coaches. He's always felt very strongly about that. He did that again yesterday to the point where he went out of his way to say that the players have to make plays. And this is a team right now that it's really like you go and sign your quarterback and you spend the money and you make all the moves that they did. They spent a lot of money this offseason. And you even had the owner, Shad Khan, come out and say before the season began, this is the best Jaguars team that has ever been or that he's ever seen. Wow. And they're not playing like that. So when the owner comes out and says it's the best team that we've had here and they haven't won a game, all you can say is if it goes on like that, something's going to give at some point in time with somebody.
So I think that clip is interesting because Shefty didn't necessarily say anything new that we didn't already know, but he did, I think, kind of confirm suspicions, which is just that there's going to be changes if things don't get turned around, which, again, is pretty obvious, but it's another thing to hear it directly from the mouth of the NFL's top reporter. This next clip, man, it made me want to run through a brick wall. This is Jamal from Channel 4 News. Just, yeah, that's the only introduction needed. Here you go.
Do it. Look, it's time for a change, and it's broken. Everything is flat out broken, and it doesn't look like it can be fixed. 0-4, and there's just ain't no coming back from that. Not for a team that had playoff expectations, a team that Shad Khan said was the best in franchise history, a team that just paid the franchise quarterback who's averaging less than 200 yards passing per game, a team that paid a franchise pass rusher who has 1 sack in 4 games. It's all wrong. There's enough blame to go around, but one thing Doug is right about is that all fingers should be pointed at that guy, Doug Peterson. This is a systematic problem. Now, there's no question that Trevor needs to play better, but who on the team doesn't need to play better right now? I'll wait. If you got an answer, please let me know. Because when there are problems at every layer of the team, there's only one finger that really needs to be pointed, and it's at the head coach. This is year 3 of the Doug Peterson era, and it should ultimately be the final year of it. The problems start and they end with that guy, Doug Peterson. Look, the defense is bad, but he gutted the defensive coaching staff last year and used those guys as scapegoats for the late season collapse. So you can't point the finger there for the second year in a row, right? After there were reports that one of the fired coaches said the problems were still in the building, whoever that guy was that said it, he knew what he was talking about. He's somewhere laughing, reading his paper, and sipping some tea, watching those problems show up every Sunday on the football field for the Jaguars. Now, one of the biggest problems is the Jaguars' offense is just flat out not functional. Doug was hired because he's an offensive guru. 3 years in, with the same core of guys, and the offense just looks lost. We've questioned the players, but at some point, the problem is you. It's the coaches. It's like if a teacher has a classroom full of students, and they all keep failing the test. At some point, the students aren't the problem. It's the teacher that doesn't know how to reach them. And right now, Doug Peterson and the coaches, you are the problem. That's your letter for the day.
Shout out to Jamal. This next clip comes from the Nightcap Show with Shannon Sharp, Chad Ochocinco, and Deion Sanders, who had a pretty good reaction to the Jaguars being 0-4 to start the year.
What's
need to be
their
in the
record?
70th percentile.
What's their record?
Got
to be 1
over.
They 0-4?
No.
0-4.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah, 0-4.
Travis?
So, of course, Deion Sanders was referencing possible Heisman winner Travis Hunter, the Colorado Buffalo, who will be assumingly entering the 2025 NFL draft and has a good chance to be the first similar clip talking about what the Jaguars could be looking at the end of the season from PFF.
Overall, I've got to imagine that no one currently in the front office or coaching staff will have a say in who makes that pick.
No, and honestly, for them, if I'm picking first overall, I'm trading down.
Yeah, obviously, I think that is something that you can't do. Travis Hunter's really good, though.
he sure is. But,
Hunter's really
good. But for as many things as he can do, can he fix their O-line problem?
No.
Can he fix their D-line problem?
Maybe. As a corner,
blitz
as
him
blitzing,
once in a while. Maybe like 2-3 plays a game he can fix that. But it's just they have
I know what you're saying.
Team-wide issues, and to blame it all on Lawrence does have his problems right now. He's absolutely pressing. I don't think there's any question he's pressing. But it's because the rest of this team is just they're not playing well enough to support him. And they can't afford for this organization cannot afford for Trevor Lawrence to fail in this period of time.
For sure.
So I think it's just always fun to talk about who the team should or could or woulda picked in the NFL draft. And usually I don't really start paying attention until after the NFL season ends. But with the Jaguars 0-4 and the only winless team in the league and controlling their own destiny to pick first overall for the third time in 5 years, it's something to just monitor and maybe talk about later during chat therapy. This next clip, we've got about 3 more clips and then some, other quotes to show, some tweets to show too. But this next clip is Doug Peterson talking on Monday about Trevor Lawrence via Jaguars YouTube.
A bit of a slump, just throwing it, or would you say could it be more of a mentality thing for him right now? Confidence? How do you describe it?
So we missed. Great example for me with him and with any quarterback. But so we missed Christian early in the third quarter. I think it was the second play. Right, we missed him on a deep. It would maybe scores. I don't know. The easy thing would have been 2nd and 10, run the football. I'm not going to do that. Yes, I will, but in this case, no. I want Trevor. You got to put the ball in his hands, right? He's our guy, and you got to put the ball in his hands, and we're going to continue to trust him. I'm going to continue to do that. So the next play, we throw it again, but he was high to Gabe. So these are all lessons that he as a player has to understand, right? And the adversity that's going to come with, oh, shoot, I just missed that one, but coach might dial up another one on this play. Let me make that. You have to kind of flush the first one to make the next one. And so he's seeing the field well. We're just not hitting. And as coaches, those are plays we just have to make. And he would stand up here and tell you the same thing. So I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, right? When I say that he knows he's got to make those throws. Those are NFL big time throws. And so we just got to keep working. He does it in practice during the week. He works with those guys when special teams are going or defense is going. And I think the more we keep working at it, better chances of hitting them in the future.
This next clip is from the Ringer NFL show with Sheil Kapadia, Steven Ruiz, and Deontay Lee talking about the relationship between Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence and kind of who's at fault.
#1 overall pick, but a guy that could take a franchise like Jacksonville and help turn it around. And to this point, no matter where I would like to diagnose the blame, we're not seeing a guy who is making any progress within this offense. And we're now multiple years now of working with Doug Peterson. And in a lot of ways, I would say he's regressing. His response to pressure looks like a guy who doesn't believe that he has the answers anymore. We're not seeing him scramble as effectively as we did last year when he was healthy. I actually thought that was one of the better parts of his game last year, was being able to take off, and 2 years ago as well. And when the accuracy starts dipping the way that it is, it almost feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, where things have gone bad. So now he has to press, he presses, and things don't get better. And now you're just kind of down this rabbit hole of the bad turning worse and the worst turning into, unviable situations. So I do think that Doug Peterson and Press Taylor have a lot of criticism that's rightfully so thrown in their direction. But for all of us who have been Trevor Lawrence believers over the years, I do think it's time for us to maybe confront the fact that we're dealing with a very talented quarterback, and wherever the scar tissue came from, at the end of the day, it's on him to be able to dig his way through it. And we just have not seen it. And if anything, I would say it's getting worse right now.
But the one thing I would push back against is the misses we're starting to see over the last 2 weeks. We didn't see pre-injury last year, and we didn't really see the year before that. This is a new development. There was no way to calibrate for Trevor Lawrence forgetting how to complete a pass downfield coming into this season.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to believe that there's been a lack of development there, and it's a coaching issue. We've seen him make these throws before. Accuracy wasn't an issue at Clemson. So I don't know. I'm inclined to believe that if you bring in a new coach, a good coaching staff, that this is easily fixable, and that the Jaguars aren't going to, be stuck with a bad contract for the next 4 or 5 years or however long his contract lasts. I don't know. I would be optimistic still as a Jaguars fan because I have the quarterback in place. It's so obvious to see that this coaching staff is just not up to this job. And it's been 7 years since Doug Peterson has led a team to more than 10 wins in a season. It's been a long time since 2017. And it doesn't start with Trevor. I feel like Trevor is way at the bottom of the list of concerns with this team right now.
So I think that was an interesting clip, mostly because of what Deontay said about Trevor Lawrence regressing. And I think that might be one of the many themes that you can relate back to Doug Peterson's tenure in Philadelphia, is that Carson Wentz had pretty much an MVP season, and he was on pace to win the MVP in 2017 if he hadn't suffered an ACL tear. But then after that, whether it was because of injury or less talent around him or plenty of other factors, but he really regressed and formed bad habits. And we're kind of seeing the same thing with Trevor Lawrence, where he was developing a little bit over the past couple of years, but had yet to take that true next step into just for sure top 8 quarterback level, I guess. Someone that can consistently win you football games week in and week out. And instead, Trevor Lawrence is going the opposite direction under Doug Peterson, which is certainly a concern. But to flip it up real quick and focus more on a former head coach, let's check out Dan Hicken and Jeff Prosser's interview with Tony Baselli about Tom Coughlin, who will be inducted as a 7th member of the Jaguars, as Pride of the Jaguars, this Sunday against the Indianapolis Colts.
Time for you to pay honor to your coach and to Fred and to your past teammates when Tom goes into a place where he is rightfully belongs.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about all the guys in the Pride of the Jaguars, so for myself, Fred, Jimmy, Mark, and the Weavers, all well-deserving. But you can't have that without Tom Coughlin.
Right.
I mean, it's just, he is the architect of this franchise. I mean, you guys were here from when we got the franchise, 93? He gets hired in 94. From 94 on, and I know when I got here in 95 after the draft,
right,
it was crystal clear. There was one guy that everything had to go through.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily fun at that age, but you certainly see the value.
Oh, I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But everything went through one guy.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking football.
Right.
I'm not just saying who's the starting left tackle or who's the starting quarterback. It's like, what color is the paint in the hallway?
Yeah.
So make sure you check out various 1010XL channels, whether YouTube, Twitter/X, live on the radio station, to hear more from Tony Baselli and other special guests about Tom Coughlin and the impacts they had on the franchise leading up to Sunday. So that is all of the videos that I have, but I've got a few more slides to show as we finish up the show and tell segment. So stand by really quickly as I pull those up. All right, first we're going to go back to, let's see if I can put myself in here too. There I am. And there's clips. All right, so first we're going to go to Steven Ruiz, who we just heard from in the Ringer show 2 clips ago, and he wrote a winners and losers column for the Ringer, and he wrote a loser was the Trevor Lawrence-Doug Peterson partnership. Ruiz wrote, quote, Peterson is officially at the throw your players under the bus stage of the coaching hot seat cycle. Peterson made that clear after Sunday's disheartening 24-20 loss in Houston when he was asked whether he considered taking over the play calling duties for Press Taylor after another disjointed performance for the Jags offense. As coaches, we can't go out there and make the plays, right? Peterson said in a clip that will get plenty of run in Jacksonville over the next few days. Perhaps Peterson, who's sitting on the hottest seat of any head coach at the moment, is already in job preservation mode. It was the first time Peterson revealed that Taylor was calling plays after being hounded about it all offseason. The Jaguars head coach, who hasn't won more than 10 games in a season since leading Philadelphia to the Super Bowl in 2017, could buy himself a few more weeks of job security by taking over the play calling. So it'll be interesting to see if we see that happening. The next quote is from Ben Solak, who wrote about the Jaguars and Doug Peterson for ESPN. He was previously with the Ringer. Solak wrote, quote, now, the funny thing is, despite his misses, Lawrence is still winning on the deep ball. He has always been an aggressive thrower, willing to attack downfield windows and hunt big plays at the expense of easier completions and high percentage targets. On throws of 20-plus air yards, Lawrence is 7 for 16 for 222 yards and a score. That's 5th in EPA per dropback and 11th in success rate. The downfield accuracy for Lawrence hasn't really been a problem. The reliance on the downfield passing game is the far bigger issue. Lawrence is averaging 9.8 air yards per attempt, easily the highest number of his career. If it held for the full season, it would be the 7th highest number for a quarterback since 2019. Meanwhile, the base passing game can't carry its weight to get to the shot plays. There are no layups, no easy buckets. The Jaguars have called almost half as many screens this season as they did in 2023, 6.5% to 12.5%, and 30% of Lawrence's passing yards have come after the catch. Since 2019, the league average is 46.7%. The Jaguars have a 20% success rate when throwing behind the line of scrimmage, which is just about the saddest thing I've ever heard. And so this goes back to, I think, what I've been talking about in recent shows, which is that you need to get Lawrence in a rhythm by doing more of those just easy layup completions, even that, like Matt Ryan was talking about in the first clip that I showed. And so we saw the Jaguars start out the game against Houston with a wide receiver screen to Christian Kirk that went for 5 or 6 yards. So they need to do more of that. And I think that that's probably an area where the absence of Evan Engram has really hurt a lot, is that you can't really do as many like the bubble screens to him or the short 5-yard hitches to him. He's a big part of Jacksonville's quick passing game. But even still, even without Evan Engram in the lineup, who's out right now with a hamstring injury, but could return against the Colts, the Jaguars need to do a better job of making their offensive attack a little bit more well-rounded. I know that they have a fairly well-rounded game in terms of like run and pass splits, but in terms of the passing game, like Lawrence is averaging more or a higher average depth of target than any quarterback except for Anthony Richardson this season, and he really needs to just have a more balanced portfolio in his passing game and not just rely too much on the deep ball, because as Solak pointed out, he actually hasn't been that bad at the deep ball, but obviously the misses that he has sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's just the reliance more so on the downfield passing game. Let's get to our next graphic. This is from Football Insights on Twitter, and it's showing the stat that I talked about with Frangie earlier in relation to Brian Thomas Jr., who, to repeat it, among all rookie wide receivers since the 2010 season, the only players with more first downs per route run than Brian Thomas Jr. so far this season is Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, Odell Beckham Jr., Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, and Justin Jefferson. So Thomas Jr. is also faring very well in receiving yards per game, as YouTube viewers or stream viewers can see it on this chart that I have pulled up. And so, yeah, I think he's also 14th in receiving yards so far this season, and he's definitely, all right, I would assume he's lower than that in total targets. And so, yeah, I've made the case before that Thomas Jr. certainly needs to see more targets, and that has not gone away. They got to feed him the rock. The first-round rookie receiver is playing, I think, better than anyone could have expected so far through a month. Next graphic comes from Daniel Griffiths on Twitter. He's a big part of Jags Twitter. Would definitely recommend following him. He has a chart that shows that Tank Bigsby leads the league in rushing yards over expectation per attempt, which is a stat from Next Gen Stats, as well as expected points added per attempt. Tank Bigsby is leading all qualifying running backs in those two stats. And so, as I mentioned with Frank, like the 58-yarder last week and other big runs will buoy that up. But Tank has certainly been efficient on the ground so far this year, and so it'll be interesting to see if he can continue that the rest of the year. But I also wanted to bring up this little blurb from Travis Holmes, Big Cut Country, who writes 20 takeaways column from each game. And so his 12th takeaway from the Houston game was that, quote, both Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby ran the ball well throughout this matchup, but for some reason it seems that the coaching staff did not fully trust leaning to Tank in these critical situations, as in goal to go, fourth down, 2-minute drill, etc. After splitting the snaps with Travis Etienne 37-31 against the Dolphins in week 1, Etienne had 72% of the snaps against the Browns in week 2, though that was because Tank had a shoulder injury on special teams. This week, as Travis writes, a seemingly healthy Bigsby, Etienne only received 52% of the snaps, and the difference went to Dearness Johnson, who ended the day with 2 rushes for 0 yards. And so basically I want to bring up this point because as good as Tank Bigsby looks running the ball and from an efficiency and advanced stats basis, the point remains that Jacksonville's coaching staff doesn't fully trust him, especially in passing situations, whether he's running a route or pass protecting. And so we're not going to see, like, obviously, as long as Travis Etienne is around and healthy, we're not going to see Tank Bigsby get a full-time role. But even if Etienne went down or missed time for whatever reason, then it's not like Tank Bigsby is all of a sudden going to get 90% of offensive snaps. He's still got to work his way into gaining more trust in passing situations. And so that's one thing to look out for an area that he can improve at. The next tweet graphic is from Zach Goodall, who covers the team for Jags Wire. He is new this season after covering the Gators for a few years, but Zach is amazing at his job, so I highly recommend following him as well. Zach tweeted, through 4 weeks, Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence's deep passing ranks per PFF. Completion percentage, 45%, tied for 10th. Adjusted completion percentage, which adjusts for drops, 50%, tied for 6th. Big time throws, 6, tied for second most. Turnover worthy throws, 0, tied for first best. And passing grade, 90.6, sixth best. I know that Lawrence also has a 6th best passer rating. I'm not sure what the actual number is, but he's also 6th best on deep throws of 20-plus air yards. And so, again, to relate it back to what Solak was writing about, Trevor Lawrence has actually been a pretty good downfield passer this year. It's just that the misses, again, stick out like sore thumbs. Gene Fournette from the Florida Times-Union tweeted last night, with the Titans about to close out over to the Miami Dolphins, that means the Jaguars will be the only NFL winless team after week 4 for the first time in franchise history. Woof. The Jaguars tweeted, sometime yesterday, just an eye emoji as a caption, and then kind of a dark picture of Travis Etienne in New Jersey teasing the throwback jerseys. And so that's another reason for optimism on today's show, is just that the Jaguars will be debuting their long-awaited throwbacks this week against the Colts. So that's something to be excited for. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about and bring up in the show and tell segment was just Tom Pelissero tweeting that Colts quarterback Anthony Richardson is considered day-to-day with oblique and abdominal strains, and he has a shot to play this week against the Jaguars, sources said after today's test. Today is in Monday. And then Tom also added, the Colts offense appears to have dodged 2 injury bullets Sunday. Running back Jonathan Taylor's high ankle sprain is mild, per Ian Rappaport, and no major injury for Richardson either. Both will be evaluated through the week. So, again, that's just something to monitor as the week progresses. So, yeah, there we go. That was that. The show and tell segment. Let me know if you guys liked that, or if it went too long, you don't care about as many of the clips, or if I should get more clips in there. But yeah, shoot me a comment and let me know how you're liking that segment. But now it's time for Chat Therapy, where I answer your questions. Yeah, that's pretty much it. A little signing board for all fans through the first month of the season. Robert Lamison asked in the YouTube comments earlier, do you think Ventrell Miller still starts once all linebackers are healthy? I think that, I know Frangie said that it's going to be hard to keep him off the field, and I don't disagree. But I also said, I think at some point last week, that I feel like they would need a reason to bench Devin Lloyd, for Devin Lloyd specifically, and not just because we've got the second-year guy who's really flashing. But all in all, I don't think it really matters because, again, Nielsen does rotate his linebackers and his defensive line a good amount. And so I think that Ventrell and Devin will both be playing about 50% of snaps once Devin Lloyd does return from his injury, which I forget what it was. I want to say it was a knee injury, but I'm not 100% confident about that. That kept him out for the Week 4 game in Houston. So, yeah, I don't know exactly who starts, but you'll see plenty of Ventrell Miller and Devin Lloyd. Robert also asked, does Trent survive as general manager this season? As of now, I'm going to say yes. I think, as Trevor Sycamore said in the PFF clip that I showed, it's hard to imagine anyone in the building right now staying around if the Jags end up picking first overall and kind of just continuing this trajectory that they're on right now. But, I mean, Frank was pretty optimistic that if they can just get their first win and they can turn around a little bit, maybe not necessarily to make the playoffs, but at least turn around from where it is right now. And so, again, I think Trent just has a crazy, crazy, crazy long leash from Shad Khan. And I think it's going to take just basically the first overall pick again for the third time in 5 years for Balky to be gone. But that's just kind of me speculating. I certainly don't have any inside sources about that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Randy asked on YouTube, question is, who really wants to come to Jacksonville with the owner, president, GM combination? I actually think the situation is pretty great because for the president, Mark Lambing is basically just a business guy. And so he's not really a big factor in terms of football operations. And then I know that Shad Connor as an owner is one of the losingest sports owners in any North American professional sports league. But he also, again, gives a long leash, especially to Balky, but to his head coaches too. And so I think would be intriguing for a coach to want to go somewhere that he knows he's going to have a long time and a couple of years and not just be one and done, to kind of build his culture and his team and whatever. And then also there's the fact that Shad Khan is a very wealthy individual and he's not shy to hand out cash, as we've seen in recent free agency classes for Jacksonville. And so I think it's actually a pretty good setup in terms of the owner and the president. But the real question does come down to general manager, because it's hard to see a lot of coaches that would be willing to just continue or to accept the job with Trent Balky remaining as the general manager. So it'll be interesting to see how all that ends up playing out. Jay commented on Facebook, I like it with all the videos. Cool. I'm glad you like it. Don't really have a lot of other comments. We've got some lingers. Sarah said, glad to hear the optimism for a change. Appreciate you, Sarah. But yeah, we've only got about 215 people in here. So the only other thing I wanted to say was that Trevor Lawrence, I looked this up yesterday, he currently ranks, I think it was third. Actually, I had it written down, so let me pull it up real quick. But I was interested in looking back at what Trevor Lawrence has been doing with play action, or really what the Jaguars have been doing with play action for Trevor Lawrence this year. Because I've noticed a lot of times when they're doing play action, it's obviously from under center, but a lot of it is dropping back in the pocket and trying to attack very far downfield, as opposed to like the Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay type schemes, where a lot of the times it's a bootleg because they're it's like an extension of their run game with wide zone, and they ended up booting out a lot and getting their quarterback on the run, and it's pretty much for the most part a half field read with someone in the flat, a deep option, and then someone basically in between the two of them. And so let's see, this season Lawrence ranks third in dropbacks that are play action inside of the pocket with 24 such dropbacks, and he ranks 25th with just 3 play action dropbacks outside the pocket. And so again, Lawrence is, when he's doing play action, having to turn his back and then having to read defenders like after the split second or the full second with his back turned, and with like the full pocket kind of collapsing on him. And so I think it'll be a lot easier for Jacksonville's offensive line and their quarterback if they did more rollout type play action throws. And I know that they don't necessarily major in wide zone as much as McVay and Shanahan do, or especially used to, but like they still run wide zone enough that I think it can be effective, and it would just set up so many more easy completions, because Lawrence, his completion percentage on play action when he's inside of the pocket is just 68.2%, which ranks 22nd in the league. And so if you're able to get him just like an easy throw into the flat, or at least get him into space where he's able to see an entire half the field, and be able to use his athleticism and possibly scramble for a pickup of yards, as opposed to just, again, turning his back and then being in the pocket with a second less to read the defense while you're still having to like display pocket management. It's just a tougher job. And so I would like to see, kind of like I was saying, the layups earlier with Trevor Lawrence, getting him like some more like wide receiver screen bubbles, some more quick game, even if Evan Engram is out of the lineup. I would also like to see Jacksonville lean into more bootleg play action, specifically where Lawrence is booting and rolling out outside of the pocket so that he can pretty much immediately either make a throw to the flat or tuck and run if he's in trouble. But I mean, hypothetically, with those bootleg type of throws, there's still deep crossers and deep route concepts that can and could get open. And so, yeah, it's just one little critique I have for the offense and what they could change going forward. Is there anything else I wanted to say today? I don't know. I feel like that was a good interview with Frank. Always enjoy talking to him. And we obviously had a lot today in the show and tell segment. So, I don't know. That seems like a good point to just kind of end.